And a good Friday morning, Louisiana. Not Moon Griffon, but anyway, how y'all are? Mark Pope sitting in for Moon. We have a busy Friday. Lots to talk about. And what I'm going to ask you folks is this first hour, we're going to soon have a guest on the Moon Griffon Show. We're going to talk about some things happening in our world, in our country, and here in the great state of Louisiana. So before we do that and get Patrick Wood on the air, of course, tomorrow is Election Day. I highly encourage you to go vote. We have an anticipated 10% turnout throughout the state. That's abysmal, folks. And we know that you folks that listen to Moon Show regularly are good, solid citizens. You're patriotic. You know the importance of voting. So enough said with that. Please go vote tomorrow. Now, let's hold on just a second. Had to reach for my materials there. So Patrick is in and ready to go, Brandon?
Yes, he's ready to go.
Outstanding. So as they say, to use the cliche, without further ado, let's introduce our guest, and then what we're going to do, folks, we're going to lay out a ballot initiative here in Lafayette. And you say, well, why are you focusing on Lafayette? This is a statewide show. No, the issue that Lafayette is facing tomorrow will be coming to a community near you here in Louisiana. It's happening throughout the nation. So we want to make you aware of the issue we're about to talk about, and that is smart cities, smart growth, sustainability. And we have an expert who's been looking into this for years. So we have our guest, author Patrick Wood. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me on this morning.
No doubt. Thank you. How's the weather in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona?
Well, we're cooling off finally, but seasonally warm. Temperatures in about the 80-degree range in the daytime.
Outstanding. Sounds kind of like us. Except your advantage, Patrick, is you have less humidity than we do down here in Louisiana. So good. Glad things are working out. And as you know, I sent you a document, and we've kind of communicated this week. And so I think you know what's coming up here in Lafayette Parish with our issue that we're going to vote on. But before we do that, let me just give the folks kind of an overview. I know you're an author and you've researched issues related to smart cities, smart growth, sustainability. I believe your last book is Technocracy Rising. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So what we're going to do, as you and I discussed, is kind of give an overview of the book. And I've read the book. It's an excellent read. If you want to learn a lot of history and become informed about things that are happening in our country and throughout the world, actually, Technocracy Rising is an excellent book for you. Let me kind of do this. Let me be the line artist, draw the stick man, and you kind of fill in the colors, if you would.
Sure.
Technocracy is something that came about in the early 1900s after World War I, in that lots of folks, experts, scientists, engineers, and academics said, oh my gosh, look what we've done. We created all these war machines, this mechanical war, and look at the millions of people that died in World War I. So kind of the mindset behind Technocracy was that just what I said, oh my gosh, look what we've done. Look what the politicians did to our world, and look how they've screwed things up. We can handle things better. Is that kind of a fairly accurate overview about how Technocracy began?
Well, it was, and they thought during the Depression that capitalism was dead. They were certain that it was going to be curtains for capitalism and free enterprise. So that's what motivated them to create an alternative economic system called Technocracy, and it was a resource-based economic system where the entire means of production and also consumption would be micromanaged by these same scientists and technicians. This is what we know today under modern names as sustainable development, if you will. Sustainability. It means balancing consumption against production and micromanagement of all the processes in between. You also know it as, by terms locally as smart growth, regional planning, for instance. These are all things that had their genesis back in the 1930s, believe it or not. It worked its way into the United Nations in the 70s and 80s, and the United Nations has taken this whole doctrine of sustainable development to every country on the planet, which is pretty incredible.
Yes. I kind of lost contact. Yes, it is. No doubt about that, Patrick. And I appreciate your being concise in segueing immediately into the smart city, smart growth issue. And I think it's a good time to go ahead and set up what we're facing here in Lafayette Parish as a ballot issue tomorrow. And that is our local government, Lafayette Consolidated Government, wants to take money from a certain property millage that has some excess, and they want to rededicate it. It's called the health millage. It pays for several things. The health unit in Lafayette Parish pays for the animal shelter and mosquito spraying. Once again, it has excess money. Flooding is an issue down here, and we've had some flooding, no doubt about that. They want to take some of that excess in the called health millage, and they want to move some into drainage, and they want to move some into what's called a CREATE initiative. Stands for culture, recreation, entertainment, arts, tourism, and economy. It is based on the sustainability. Now, spokespersons for Lafayette Consolidated Government have denied that. When the social media here in Lafayette is on fire, back and forth, some for, some against, from what I can gather, mostly against, because it is a bait and switch. And a spokesperson recently said, what are you talking about? The United Nations is nowhere in CREATE or Plan Lafayette. And that is exactly incorrect, because one of the best practices, the first list on organizations for best practice for the CREATE initiative is UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And as you know, Patrick, and the listeners may learn, UNESCO is, I don't know, how do you call them, an extremist, ultra-left organization that one of the major focuses that they have is to promulgate, if you will, or distribute gloom and doom environmental education, misleading young people into thinking that we have to have a futuristic, smart, sustainable society. And is that a fairly good short description of UNESCO and the United Nations?
Well, it is. All of the agencies, 100% of them at the United Nations, are focused on sustainable development. They have converted their entire organization, which has many different divisions. UNESCO is a large part of that, but there are, there are probably 50 different agencies that are of the same size and importance. They are all focused on establishing sustainable development around the world. And within that, there are all kinds of initiatives to drive segments of society towards sustainable development. But there is never another alternative offered. Whatever the problem is, doesn't matter what the problem is, the answer is always sustainable development. So UNESCO is an important fear-mongering type organization in a way that presents problems that don't have solutions outside of sustainable development.
Yes, exactly right. And I was looking for, and I'll find it later in the hour, we're going to get some quotes. The word sustainability and smart city, smart growth came from what's called the Earth Summit, a United Nations-sponsored environmental conference, if you will. And there were events and conferences and terms, if you will, the push for sustainability. Smart growth is actually a euphemism that came later, but sustainability came about in the late 80s. In 92 with the Earth Summit, the United States was there. That's when that term was first coined, or if you will, hit the public. And it's just, here are a couple of things. If from the United Nations, I'm looking at an article here from Investors Business Daily. Let me go ahead and read it. It's short. At a news conference in 2015 in Brussels, Cristina Figueres, Executive Secretary of the UN's Framework Convention on Climate Change, admitted that the goal of environmental activists is not to save the world from ecological calamity, but to destroy capitalism. Investors Business Daily, I would call that a reputable news source. And then similarly,
yes, indeed.
Yes. Similarly, just to kind of show the folks that this is not conspiracy theory, it's not from a blog site, from another reputable news source. Former chairman of Temple University, Dick Fox, was seated alongside the heads of multiple environmental groups at a conference. Apparently, the climate activists thought Fox and company were on the same page as him, and if everything said in the room would stay there, Fox pushed for some answers. He was looking for the true purpose of the environmental movement, and he managed to casually lead the environmentalists into admitting that their agendas focused on reducing population. The environmentalists also confirmed to Fox that their focus had absolutely nothing to do with the environment. Wow. Well, let's pick up there because I think it is time for a break. And we're going to come back, take this short time out. We're with Patrick Wood, author of Technocracy Rising, an expert in sustainability, smart development. Appreciate your time, Patrick. We'll take this time out, and we'll be back shortly here on the Moon Griffon Show. All right, welcome back to the Moon Griffon Show. Mark Pope sitting in for Moon, and we have our special guest, Patrick Wood, author and expert on sustainability, smart city, smart growth. We are going to defeat this issue tomorrow on the Lafayette ballot. So welcome back, Patrick, and thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate you. So
you betcha. Good to be here.
That Earth Summit back in '92, where the term sustainability began to spread, here are a couple of comments from some folks after that Earth Summit. This is a comment from Maurice Strong, UN Secretary General. Quote, current lifestyles, obviously pertaining to sustainability, current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, home and work air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable, end quote. UN Secretary General, folks. From the organization Earth First, we must make this place an insecure and inhospitable place for capitalists and their projects. We must reclaim the roads and plowed lands, tear down existing dams, free shackled rivers, and return to wilderness the tens of millions of acres presently settled land. And the final one, I've got multiple, but reading things is not, but I'm sure the people, few people of our listeners, their jaw is hanging open. This is from Gary Lawrence. He was the sustainability advisor to President Bill Clinton. And here's what Mr. Lawrence said pertaining to sustainability. Quote, participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy-fixated groups and individuals in our society. So we call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth, end quote. That's some pretty damning quotes there, Patrick.
They're absolutely true as well. That is the fact. One of the reasons that virtually every city council and county commissioners across America do not know the phrase or the term Agenda 21 is for that very reason. They changed the name in America.
Yes. Now,
every other country in the world and the United Nations knows what Agenda 21 is. They call it that. But here in America, they call it smart growth, and nobody had a clue what happened. It was a switch, and every community, every city planner, every county commissioner knows smart growth. We've just been talking the wrong language to them. You know, you say, well, you're doing Agenda 21. They say, no, we're not. What's that?
Yes.
They don't know. They really don't. But they know smart growth.
Yes. That was a question I was going to ask. How many of these people who are trying to foist this smart city, smart growth, sustainability on the public, how many of them do you believe are aware of the history and the background of where these terms came from?
Probably about 5%.
About 5%. Yeah, because a lot of it is, A lot of these folks are the younger folks, and that's the case with Lafayette Parish. I haven't laid out. Let me do this. We have about 2 minutes, Patrick, before we have a hard break. So let me go out and let me go ahead. I've kind of touched on it. Let me lay out what people are voting for in Lafayette. I talked about the millage rededication. They want to take the health millage, move some into drainage, and move some into this create. It's a ruse. It's a bait and switch. If they wanted to do it, they should have done it honestly. But nonetheless, what it does is it's deceptive in that a mail piece went out. And with that mail piece, it was only a one-sided story. They mentioned moving money into drainage, which is needed, but this is not an honest effort. It's a bait and switch. And people do not trust when government is deceptive. The second thing, the millage rededication, moving some into create, the United Nations-backed initiative. I can't really say backed, but they're using it as a model. What it is an unnecessary, wasteful expansion of government, because there are numerous organizations in Lafayette Parish that already promote and support the arts, tourism, and all the aspects of create. So once again, it's unnecessary. And I'm going to read some things from the document when we get back. So we will continue this. We've got a little more than a minute. And the final thing is the create document, which we're going to pick up on when we get back from this break that's coming up shortly. The create document is 22 pages. And it is written in general language, which is very hard to understand. And you better put on your thinking caps, folks, because you're going to hear some gobbledygook that's in this create document. UNESCO, the United Nations, is in the document as best management practices. And you're going to hear what Pat and I have been talking about, sustainability. Doesn't mention smart growth, but sustainability, direct and indirect references are throughout this create document. So it's a bait and switch. And once again, a spokesman, Lafayette Consolidated Government, says, United Nations is not in that document, has nothing to do with the United Nations. It's in your document, Lafayette Consolidated Government. Read it, learn it. Okay, we're going to take the time out, and we'll be back with more on Smart City, Smart Growth, sustainability, and defeating this ballot issue in Lafayette Parish tomorrow. And folks, if it's not in your city, it's coming there soon. Keep your eyes open. We'll be back with more of the Moon Griffon Show. Okay, welcome back to the Moon Griffon Show. Mark Pope sitting in for Moon. Our special guest on this Friday, Patrick Wood, a nationally known author and expert on smart city, smart growth, sustainability, and technocracy. We'll hit on technocracy on another show, although we've done it on other shows when I've subbed for Moon. So anyway, here's where we left off, Patrick, and I want to end the listening public. So if I haven't been clear, There is our group is called the Watchdogs. We are in the hundreds right now. And those hundreds of people have all sent our documents out to other multiple people. So I would venture to say, let me be conservative and say we're around 1,000 people. It might be 2,000 because people have been sending these documents warning about this CREATE initiative, which has the United Nations in it. It's in their document. They don't even know it. So I can't say they're lying. They just probably don't know it. They're not well informed. Here is some language from the CREATE document. Remember, folks, CREATE: culture, recreation, entertainment, arts, tourism, and economy. Here we go. Direct quotes from the 22-page CREATE document. You better sit down for this one. The creative disciplines are specific branches of knowledge within a cluster dedicated to the practice of activities and experiences, providing mental and/or physical training. Under each cluster, we have organized relevant disciplines for further organization of collaborative efforts. Next, the Create Lafayette Initiative was established with an understanding that these clusters and disciplines would and should overlap, thereby strengthening the ecosystem. Ecosystem? Tourism? Are you kidding me? Next, under objectives, design a combined and redefined millage adjustment campaign to successfully fund the Create Lafayette mission without immediately increasing cost to citizenry. Next quote from the 22-page CREATE document. Inventory and develop hubs of creativity and innovation with stakeholder input to name and centralize creative assets, concentrating on physical density, human capital, and incentives to live and work in a district. And is this final? No, two more to go. Our public-private sector advisors perceive the creative industries as key factors of sustainable economic, social, cultural, and environmental development. Thought we were talking about education in the arts. How does environmental development, sustainable environmental development, sneak into a culture and arts document? And finally, from the 22-page Create document, our task is to align the creative economy with other strategic priorities for sustainable growth, excellence in learning, heritage preservation, and nurturing a welcoming, vibrant community. What do you think about those quotes from our 22-page UN-inspired Create document, Patrick?
That's very typical language. This is the kind of language that you see across the country. You called it gobbledygook. That's probably, a pretty good phrase, but it's common language. It's templated. This was not language that was developed within your own community. Your own people that live there in Lafayette don't know this kind of language. This is external to your community.
Yes. And
it was brought in, sold to you, and everybody said, "Oh, that sounds like that's really good." That makes a lot of sense. And so they splattered it all over their documents, including their general plan. And the people that are expected to buy it, that's your rank and file citizens, they don't have a clue that this was not generated from within their own community. They think they did it.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, they're so smart. Oh, they're just so on the edge, state of the art type thinking, and they're so smart to come up with this stuff." Well, let me tell you, they didn't come up with any of it.
Yeah,
they sat back on their laurels, and they brought in consultants from the outside who brought this language in, who brought this kind of thinking and plan in, and they handed it over to the local officials and said, "Here, you can take this and call it yours." And they did.
Yes.
And basically it's a fraud. It's a fraud. They didn't do it.
Yes. Well, from a very reputable source, one of our other talk show hosts here in Lafayette, hi, Carol, we have it on good authority that the Lafayette Consolidated Government paid $55,000 for this document. Thanks for that research, Carol. So, yeah, there you have it. It's groupthink, Patrick. It's groupthink. Everybody else is doing it. We want to be a progressive, smart community. And by the way, folks, listeners, the opposite of smart city is not dumb city. It's like boiling the frog in water. You slowly raise the temperature with this smart city stuff. It starts warm and fuzzy and innocent, but the more it goes along, the more you get grants, and the more you are indebted to these organizations. You must do this and you must do this. And before you know it, you've got regulations that are infringing on your freedoms as a citizen. That's where this stuff heads. It starts, as I said, warm and fuzzy and sweet and innocent. But in the future, in the years and the time to come, before you know it, you say, "Oh my gosh, what have we got here? What kind of monster?"
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's taken 2 decades for sustainability to take off here in the United States. Is Europe ahead of the U.S. in implementing this smart city sustainability? I'm going to call it nonsense.
Absolutely, they are. There wasn't nearly as much resistance in Europe for a number of reasons. But Europe is not America. The American spirit still is very independent. And we still have some semblance of a constitution that guarantees freedom and liberty in our country. So Europe has caved almost completely to this thinking, United Nations thinking, and they're riddled with it, top to bottom. They're absolutely riddled with it. They are looking. Patriots in those countries, by the way, in Europe, are looking to us, Mark, to stop this. I get letters from people in Europe email, and they get it. They really understand it. Maybe they bought my book or they just did their own research. They get it that they're in deep trouble, and they say, we're looking to you Americans to stop this stuff because we can't. We're too deep in it. We can't do anything. Our hands are tied.
I know
really sad.
Yes, it is. And I know some of the nation states in the European Union are looking to pull out because of the overreach, not totally, but in part because of the overreach of smart city development. Because remember that quote from Create? They wanted to break up a millage like they're trying here for the vote tomorrow. You have to vote no, folks, on the rededication of the health millage. They say clearly in their Create plan, we need to break up a millage so we can get some money and not immediately raise cost for our citizens. So what that means is cost will rise over time, because once you start, you're on that slippery slope, and it's hard to turn back.
I should probably say that every implementation of smart growth, and there's a study a couple of years ago that completely supported this thought, wherever smart growth is implemented, prices to consumers on everything across the board goes up.
Yeah.
In some communities, it was measured as much as 25%. Now, when I say costs go up, we're talking about property values, we're talking about taxes, we're talking about other fees and things that they have to charge in order to support the whole mechanism. Mm-hmm. Everything goes up. And, people wonder what happened to our nice little, rural or whatever, peaceful little city. And all of a sudden, everybody's running around trying to figure out, where can I live? Where can I find an affordable apartment? Mm-hmm. In a business, how can I get through all the regulatory nonsense to start a little business or to build a little, a business building or something? Mm-hmm. Is absolutely out of hand. Everywhere this comes in, the control mechanism has to be paid for. Well, duh, of course it does.
Yes.
So all those people get salaries. All those regulations cost money to enforce and for the people to do them. And so smart growth is a curse to every community it's come into.
Yes, it is. And excellent information, folks. You're listening to Patrick Wood, expert on sustainability and smart growth. What we're going to do, we're going to talk about Common Core, UNESCO and the United Nations' effect on Common Core, and some concrete examples of what is smart growth, what we can expect if this takes off in Lafayette and other cities here in Louisiana. So stay with us, folks. More coming up with Patrick Wood. Mark Pope sitting in for Moon. We'll be back after this timeout. Okay, welcome back to the Moon Griffon Show. Friday morning, Mark Pope sitting in for Moon, and we have a very special guest, author Patrick Wood, expert on sustainability, smart cities, smart growth. And we're talking about issues pertaining to that because we're looking at possibly smart city, smart growth kicking off tomorrow if the ballot issue to rededicate our health millage here in Lafayette Parish passes, because there's a Create document and United Nations is part of it, even though the consolidated government denies it. All you have to do is look at their document and see the code language. It's definitely a substantial part of this Create document and what they want to create. So welcome back in, Patrick. And as we said, here's what we'd like to do. If you could, where do we start? UNESCO, United Nations, UNESCO, once again, for those who joined us late, stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. They had some substantial influence in coming up and getting Common Core education implemented. Is that correct?
It did, and most of the Common Core philosophy came from UNESCO originally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and it's
it
pretty.
Did. And I might add, as people probably are somewhat aware, the Common Core education standards that were kind of spread around the country were created not by government organization at all. It was created by NGOs, that's non-governmental organizations, with private money. It had nothing to do with our government, nothing to do with our education department in Washington, which I probably don't think should even exist anyway, but it does. But it had nothing to do with that. And there was really no local representation involved in creating, that is, government organization, people-oriented organization, involved in creating Common Core education standards. And yet, they convinced the government to shove it down the throats, or try to shove it down the throats, of all 50 states in America. Mm-hmm. And basically the same type of standards are already being used in other parts of the world as well, thanks to UNESCO.
Yes, yes. And it is here in the United States. I've seen it in the public schools. I was environmental manager, and I'm going to give one very prominent example after you talk about what smart city initiatives mean, some concrete examples. But it is here in the education system throughout the United States. A large part of what UNESCO does is gloom and doom education for our young people, misleading them to think that we all have to become futuristic, smart, sustainable cities, or else we won't survive. And it's a ruse. It really is a ruse. So if you would, Patrick, give us several examples or 2 or 3 examples of what exactly people can look for if a smart city initiative takes off in their city or their parish or county.
Well, the things that you're looking at right now in this program that you've already read about and stuff, those are the exact things you'll see everywhere. Whenever you see somebody starting to talk about cultural issues, your radar should go up. Every time you hear something about land use or land policies, your radar should go up. Anytime you see consultants coming in from the outside, your radar should go up. And here's my personal beef with this. You pay the people that you elect and hire in your area, you pay for those people, tax money. You expect them to do the things for your community that you pay them for, whatever it might be. Planning, yeah, we need planning. Certainly we do. That's why you hire a city planner. But when they turn around and spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring in outside consultants to do their job, mm-hmm. you have just paid twice for that politician or that city manager.
Right.
It's insanity. And they need to be held accountable for this because you paid them to do that job. You didn't pay them to go and find a consultant to come in and do it.
Right.
And in any case, this is how this stuff comes in from the outside. It has nothing to do with your local people whatsoever.
Right.
It was not, in other words, it was not generated by the people in your city. And after all, it is your city, right?
Exactly.
You should be able to take care of yourself. I know you're not idiots down there.
No, we're very smart. Cajun folks are very smart. And this sustainability stuff does not fit the Cajun culture. It's groupthink, Patrick. You know that. Everybody else is doing it. We want to be a smart city. We don't want to be a dumb city. It's such an oxymoron. It's such a bait and switch. We can be smart in our Cajun ways. Yes, we need to work on flooding issues and drainage issues. We need retention detention, but we don't need this smart city stuff because it's a slow creep. And before you know it, it's already in Plan Lafayette. What you talked about, land use regulations, it's already there. Let me give my quick example of what I dealt with as a 27-year employee with the local government. I was environmental manager. This smart city stuff came in. The smart city folks, that's what I'm going to call them. I'm not name calling. I'm not going to name individuals. They set an individual who worked in my division to work on this massive plan, 36 requirements from garbage companies, waste companies, for mandated recycling. The largest garbage company in the United States, Waste Management, declined to respond to this. I'm not going to say anything other than that. So luckily, our council got a hold of it and said, no, we're not going to mandate recycling for 52,000 households and every business in Lafayette Parish. The smart city folks wanted to mandate recycling. When you have a mandate, that means there's consequences because you're not doing it, you're breaking the law. So they went ahead with it died. Mandated recycling died. We rolled out 38,000 recycling carts. That's the full population of City of Lafayette households. 19,000 used the recycling before. They wanted to. They followed the rules. So now we've got twice the number of recycling carts. Guess what happened? Garbage started flowing into the recycling carts. Our recycling is worth a whole lot less. I can't say it's worthless, but we've lost from an effective program, a free market program. We went to, in essence, everybody gets a cart. We want you all to recycle. So the Smart City folks said we're going to improve the program when actually they severely damaged it in their infinite wisdom. So it's just really, really, really ironic, the things that happen under the heading of this Smart City stuff. Crying shame. We've got 2 minutes left, Patrick. I'm going to encourage people, read the book. Patrick Wood is an author. He's got numerous books out there. His last book is Technocracy Rising. A lot of what we're talking about today is in that book, and you'll learn about the genesis of all this smart city and sustainability stuff. Technocracy Rising by Patrick Wood. Now, your organization has Ninja Warrior Training. We don't have long, Patrick, about a couple of minutes. Can you give us an overview of that? Because I will be taking Ninja Warrior Training. What does that do, please, in 2 minutes or less?
Well, Citizen Ninja Training is a course that was developed by an activist in California with tons of experience at it. And she created an 8-hour class that we deliver electronically over the internet across a 4-week period. And it teaches people the basics on how to interact with people like in your city or, people that need to be interacted with, and put it that way. It doesn't teach the issues, but it teaches you how to interact personally to get your point across without inflaming the other person and breaking off the communication altogether. And these are necessary stepping stones that every person needs to have, or if they're going to be involved in activism, and they should. Mm-hmm. The home of Citizen Ninja Training is localactivist.org. Localactivist.org. And I would encourage anybody to go there and take it. There's a small fee for it to cover the cost of delivery.
Yes. I'll be signed up for that's for sure. You and I talked about it. You can count on it. Folks, tomorrow, if you're in Lafayette Parish or any city in Louisiana, watch out for this stuff. Vote no on the rededication of the 3.56 health millage. We have to defeat this stuff. If not, we're on this slippery slope for sustainability and smart growth. Patrick Wood, thank you very much. Excellent information. Hope to have you back someday. And if I don't talk to you before then, have a great Thanksgiving and a very Merry Christmas. Thanks a lot for your time, Patrick.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you.